The 100th Infantry Battalion from Hawaii was activated 7 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. It was the first Japanese-American fighting group. The nissei, or second-generation Japanese Americans, volunteered to fight for the land of their birth, the adopted land of their parents. The Hawaiian boys gave the combat team their motto, "Go for broke." It's a gambler's term. It means shoot the works, go all out, do or die, go for broke. Their early success led President Roosevelt to reopen military service for other Japanese-American volunteers, which led the way for 5,000 volunteers which formed the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. When the 100th reached the rock-encrusted slopes of Monte Cassino, Italy, they went head-on into one of the greatest defense bulwarks of World War II, the German Gustav Line. It was this grueling and brutal contest for a 1,500-foot-high mountain that introduced the nissei to the American public as a crack fighting unit. January 24th, 1944, the 100th was thrown against the 1st German Parachute Division, an elite SS unit firmly entrenched. During the next 48 hours, they fought fiercely and demonstrated their courage and fighting spirit. The cost was terrible. B Company lost 171 of its 181 men. It was on those slopes, pounded by rain, frozen by the cold of winter, that the 100th's undaunted courage created the legend of the nissei soldiers, the little iron men who just never retreated. Word of their valor spread throughout the Fifth Army. When the 100th landed in Italy, it numbered 1,300 men. 5 months later, after Monte Cassino, the 100th had dwindled to 521 persons. Soon, newspapers back in the States carried the story of the Purple Heart Battalion. To replace its decimated ranks, it was combined with the nissei 442nd Regimental Combat Team, but was able to keep its 100th unit designation because of its battle-hardened record. The 100th was next sent to Anzio, and after the breakout there, it once more did the seemingly impossible. When 2 battalions, twice its number, failed to conquer the last enemy roadblock on the road to Rome, the 100th broke through. For Belvedere and Caserta campaigns, the 100th received the first of 3 presidential unit citations. With only 4 men killed and 7 wounded, the 100th killed 178, wounded 20, captured 86, along with destroying 2 tanks, 8 jeeps, 13 motorcycles, and 2 command vehicles. Biffontaine, France. For several days, the 1st Battalion of the 141st Regiment were trapped 9 miles behind enemy lines. 2 other battalions of the Texas Division tried to reach the unlucky troops, but were beaten back. Within the tightening Nazi encirclement, the desperate American soldiers were running low on food, ammunition, water, and medical supplies. Word had spread of the gallant performance and fierce fighting of the 100th and 442nd. They were ordered to rescue the lost battalion. The rescue of the lost battalion has been designated by the Department of Defense as one of the 10 most significant battles in U.S. Army history. October 27, 1944. After 10 days of heavy fighting, the exhausted men of the 442nd were awakened by orders to rescue the lost battalion. Moving across a narrow ridge, the nisseis were exposed to machine gun nests, artillery, tanks, snipers, and mine tripwires. After 3 days of hell on earth, under incessant infantry and artillery fire, at noon on October 30th, they broke through German lines to rescue the 211 Americans left of the lost battalion. Then, they pushed on to take the ridge that had been the Lost Battalion's original objective. 1,300 members of the 100th 442nd took part in the rescue. 800 were casualties. In the burning cold and blistering wind, the wounded nissei went into shock before their buddies could wrap them in blankets. At full strength, a company has 200 men. I Company was reduced to 4 riflemen and a light machine gun section. K Company was reduced to 17 riflemen and a part of a weapons platoon. The 100th and 442nd had one of the highest casualty rates in the Army. It suffered more than 9,000 dead and wounded. Despite this, the 100th and 442nd had taken virtually every objective assigned to it as though operating on a schedule. It was rewarded with over 18,000 individual decorations, making it the most decorated unit in U.S. history for its size and duration. Despite their achievements, the nissei were not treated as Americans. The volunteers, all American citizens, came to the unit with a draft board rating 4C, meaning enemy alien. Their dead were not allowed to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. On the home front, Congressman John Rankin was quoted as saying,
"Once a Jap, always a Jap. You can't any more regenerate a Jap than you can reverse the laws of nature."
Senator Dan Inouye, a member of the 442nd who lost an arm during the war, recalls departing Hawaii after volunteering. On the way to the ship, among the fanfare, we were guarded by military police. Whenever we tried to wave to friends, the MPs would admonish us and make us stop. And if some agonized father or mother tried to rush out from the crowd to touch or shake a hand, or embrace in one last hug, they would be pushed away, or, as in one case that I witnessed, even beaten away. A letter from the veterans of the 34th Division who fought with the 100th and 442nd appeared in the Des Moines Register, read as follows.
There are plenty of folks that call themselves Americans that have much less to prove they give a hang about their country than the men of the 100th Battalion. Whenever you've been near enough to see these boys die for their country, then is the time to voice your opinion. There have been many times when these Japanese, as you call them, have sacrificed their lives only because they've proven themselves better Americans than Americans not of Japanese descent. When you have seen these boys blown to bits, going through shell fire that others refused to go through, and sleep, when they could, in foxholes half full of water, and other horrors not to be mentioned, then is the time to voice your opinion, not before.
The men of the 100th and 442nd fought for their imprisoned families and to prove Japanese-American loyalty to the United States. They did this with valor and with their blood. February 19, 1942, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, providing for the mass evacuation and incarceration of Japanese in America and Japanese Americans. Most evacuees only had 3 days' notice, and they could only take the baggage that they can carry with them. Over 80,000 American citizens were relocated. In the major portion of the West, all persons of any degree of Japanese descent, men and women, grandmothers and babes in arms, were transferred en masse to relocation camps where they were kept behind barbed wires for over 3 years. 5 to 8 people lived in a 125-foot square room, and 250 people shared one communal latrine. One internee recalls her experience at an assembly center. There was a lack of privacy everywhere. The incomplete partitions in the stalls in the barracks make a single symphony of yours and your neighbor's loves, hates, and joys. One had to get used to the snores, baby crying, family trouble, and even to the jitterbugs. The flush toilets were always out of commission. The sewage system was poor, and the stench from the stagnant sewage was terrible. We lined up for mail, for checks, for meals, for showers and laundry tubs, for toilets, for clinical services and movies. We lined up for everything. In 1943, the Los Angeles Examiner wrote, "One thing is certain, that war or no war, Californians will never again permit Japanese settlement in this state. They were contrary to the social development of American communities, and they were economic menaces to American workers." Many ask, what was it like to be called enemy alien in the country of your birth and to prove your loyalty to the United States Constitution by giving up your constitutional rights? What was it like to be suddenly uprooted from everything familiar and corralled behind barbed wire fences for up to 3 years? Frank Kadawaki, internee, says, "But this concentration camp business is very bad. That means the mind always remains on what we did, on what passed in camp, and they made a big mistake. We didn't do nothing. We work the same as the working people. We're working hard and pay the taxes and everything, same as other people. And my brother went to the 442nd and fought against the Germans. Even he went to camp, and then he was drafted, I think. Forget it. Forget it." Then always something happens and brings back a bad memory. Charles Mikami, "I don't like to move, but I got a baby, and my wife got nervous breakdown right away." In January 1945, nearly 3 years of exile, the Supreme Court of the United States determined that it was a violation of their constitutional rights to keep them in confinement. Of the 110,000 interned, some 43,000 resettled away from their home in the West Coast. Many had no desire to return and reopen the psychological scars of evacuation. Even after the war on the West Coast, there were many reports of terrorist incidents against Japanese Americans, drive-by shootings, unexplained fires, beatings, and hostile telephone threats. The following is a poem by an anonymous internee who writes about the fence that kept him corralled for 3 years.